Happy Chanukah. Welcome. My face is smiling because smiles go together with light and light goes together with joy. And we're celebrating yet another Chanukah after thousands of years since the miracle took place close to 2,500 years ago. Actually, I should say a little less, 2,300 years ago. We are still here celebrating Chanukah and lighting the flames. In the words of Nachmanides, Haneres halalu einam b'telim la'elam. These flames never were extinguished. And it's quite amazing that though the temple was destroyed close to 2,000 years ago, and the menorah was lit every day, that menorah ultimately, tragically, was extinguished. But Haneres halalu, these flames, the flames that we light, tonight we've lit the fifth flame. 5 flames, einam b'telim la'elam, are never extinguished, which is absolutely a demonstration of eternity, of perpetuation, and that should bring a smile to all our faces, that despite all that we went through, despite the persecutions and the genocides, despite the darkness, despite the many clouds, despite the so many killings and murders, and yet we still stand and we still light the flames. As the dusk settles, the sun sets, as the Talmud says, Mishatishka Chama, with the setting of the sun, we light the flames facing outdoors, al pesach beisim b'chutz, by the door, by the window facing to the outside, to illuminate the darkness. What greater demonstration, what greater celebration of hope, of persistence, of fortitude is there than the story of Chanukah. So it's an absolute lesson to all of us that no matter what our challenges are, no matter how dark things may be, we have the power to light up the night. And all of us know, every one of us knows, in our own personal lives, we each have many challenges. We have challenges on a personal level, on a psychological level, on an emotional level. And Chanukah is about the flame, not just the physical flames we light, but the flames that we light within. Because the soul, at the end of the day, Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam is compared to a flame. Ner Mitzvah Torah are the actions, the good deeds we do, the Torah we study, the good acts, the kindness that we bestow, that we express to others, is all flames, all lights that pierce the darkness of this world, the darkness, the coldness, the selfishness, the loneliness of this dark world. So just that alone, I believe, is cause to celebrate. That alone is cause to honor, because we're honoring the flame, the eternal flame that burns within each of us. So, to choose what a better topic than to talk about is how much light do you have? We all can talk plenty about the pain that we have experienced. Many people can describe how much darkness they've gone through. But can you describe how much light you carry within you? How much potential does each of us have in this lifetime? Right within us, how much potential do we have? And how much of that potential has been actualized? I don't know if you think about this question. I know some people may get depressed by it. But the truth is, as we shall discuss this Chanukah evening, the goal here is to discover, not necessarily to know how much potential, but to know that that potential can be actualized by using certain methods, by using certain time-tested and proven techniques that can actually help you find out what you're about, build the confidence and the courage to actualize that inner flame and the inner resources, that great light that each of us has within us. So that's a good place to begin, to try to assess what it is that we're made of. Now, I've discussed many times here, and I'm sure you're familiar with this idea, either through your own experience or through things that you've heard here, and that is, unfortunately, life is a battle. Maybe it's fortunate as well, as we shall discuss, but unfortunately, what I mean by unfortunately, not the battle part, but the wearing down. Every second of your life, every second of our lives, all of our lives, is a constant assault on your own confidence. In other words, it's not the forces of light that necessarily shape you, it could be forces of darkness. So the question is, what kind of environment and what kind of friends and people do we have around us? What messages are we picking up in our environments, at our workplace, at home, in our social environments, in the different places we travel to? What are the messages? And if the messages reinforce darkness, obviously it's not going to help actualize your own inner spirit and your own inner light. So, above all, it's about environment. So on Chanukah, what do? We create a lighting environment, illuminated environment. We take a flame, we light a flame. Each night we add another flame. And we're meant to spend a little few moments, half hour or as much time as you like, watching these flames. It says, when we say in the Haneres Halala, we say, we have no permission to use them, but we have just to look at them. Because there's something about observing these flames that creates an environment, a certain serenity, tranquility that flames give off. They burn silently, but they do something that almost nothing else can do, which is pierce darkness. A little light dispels darkness. So Chanukah is surround yourself with light. So message number one is to look at our lives and say, how much light do we surround ourselves with? And light both means in the physical sense, but above all in the spiritual and psychological sense. Are you around people who have that type of tranquility and harmony? Do they illuminate? Do they give off warmth? Are they something you can just look at, even if you gain nothing from them in a sense, in the business sense? There's no personal gain. Just by observing these flames, it brings peace into ourselves. So the first thing is to be surrounded in that type of environment. So Chanukah, 8 days of Chanukah, is about creating an environment of light. And that becomes contagious. When you're around light, it tends to bring out the light within you too. Look at a flame, for example. You get close to a flame, bring a flame close to another flame, what happens? The second flame begins to be drawn to the first flame. So when you're around light, generally speaking, it's going to evoke and it's going to provoke you and elicit from within you some of your light. You're involved with other people in a positive project, in a great project, and everyone's challenged, and let's get this done, and you're involved and you're needed. It's going to force you and pressure you to bring out deeper light. Which brings me to the second point, pressure. So one is the environment, being surrounded around light, and second is pressure. The expression in the Talmud goes about olive oil, the oil we use on Chanukah night. What is the oil we use? It says, Zayis, an olive. Ein moitze shamre does not produce its oil, until you press it, until you squeeze it. Which is a fundamental lesson in life. Pressure brings out the best in us. This is true whether it's diamonds from the deep, whether it's oil beneath the surface of the earth, whether it's the squeezing of olives or grapes that bring out their oil. When you are a creative person and you have a challenge, you have a competition, it will bring out the best of you. Now many of us, or most of us, are afraid of competition. Initially, almost everybody does not want to have competition. Why not just ride it through? But that challenge, when someone else is challenging you, when you have to run a marathon and you have competitors riding right near you, it brings the best out of you because it forces you to deliver, to rise to the occasion. So Chanukah, we light the Chanukah flames based on, from olive oil is the preferable way of lighting a flame, even though you can light candles. And olive oil comes from pressure. Kosis lamoyer. The pressure that we squeeze out from olives, that oil, and in turn that oil produces the flames that we burn. So lesson number 2 is, not only don't be afraid of pressure, try to bring on pressure into your life, healthy pressure. Now the word pressure itself has a very negative connotation in our day and age. It has a negative connotation because it seems like pressure is like deadlines, other people imposing themselves on us, pressures that are burdens. Pressure and burden seem synonymous. So I want to distinguish between healthy pressure and unhealthy pressure. And I want to do this with an example. One of the first places we find pressure in the Bible is actually the story of the Jews in Egypt. They were under great pressure. They were in hard labor, in slavery. Avodah kosha is the word. Difficult, avodah kosha. They worked hard. Avodas perach. A very difficult labor. Hard labor. So the expression in the beginning of the book of Exodus, it says that what you have is that Egypt, Pharaoh and the Egyptians worked the Jews hard with bricks and mortar. They forced them to with their own hands, create bricks and mortar out of straw and out of mud, and get down to their arms and knees, their arms and legs, or hands and knees is the expression, and build these bricks and mortar. Chaymer Levenim. But there's an interesting expression in the Zohar. The Zohar says that Chaymer doch kal v'chomer and Levenim do liben hirchasa. Let me explain what that means in Aramaic. The meaning of that is that Chaymer, the kal v'chomer, is an expression means that from the lenient, a priori, from the lenient, you can derive a law in a more harsher environment, harsher circumstances. So, for example, if a certain law is designated in a particular situation, you know if the situation is a far harsher one, meaning a far stricter one, then you can derive from the more lenient case, you can derive to a more extreme case. So, for example, if something is a law that applies to the laws of litigation, financial damages, you definitely can apply from that to a thing that's connected, for example, to matters of health and life and death. So that's kal v'chomer. Then it says, Levenim, which means bricks and mortar, is do libun hilchasa. Levenim also means libun hilchasa, which means crystallization. The clarity that comes out of a subject matter after you weigh it and you struggle with it and you argue about it. So libun hilchasa, you come to a certain crystal clear clarity. So here's this obvious question. Chaymer Levenim, the literal interpretation, is talking about hard labor, people sweating in slavery, and suddenly the Zohar applies it almost in this type of euphemistic manner, comparing it to what? To study. It's the study of Torah, the study and the different methodologies and how one derives laws. How do you connect the two? One is harsh, bitter labor in a terrible genocide, a terrible exile in Egypt, and the other is the efforts that we exert when we study. And the answer, my friends, is a very profound but also extremely deeply psychological insight. And that is that we have a choice in our lives. Whether we will all be pressured in life. Life is made of pressure. As soon as you leave your mother's womb, if you go through that canal, there's pressure. When you enter into this material world, there's pressure. There's health issues. There's the challenges of survival. As we get older, we need to make ends meet. Life is filled with challenges and pressures. But there are two options. Either you're going to choose upon yourself the negative pressures of being in bondage, enslaved, and imposed upon by some form of oppression. And that can mean on a psychological level, it can mean anyone that you allow yourself to be controlled or imposed upon by employers, by the pressures of society, by market pressures and so on. Or you're going to assume upon yourself, initiate healthy pressures. The pressures that you use your mind to try to struggle through an idea. And basically it's our choice. If you take upon yourself healthy pressures, you will not need unhealthy pressures to bring out the best of you. So the Aleph is a symbolic of pressure. The idea of bringing upon yourself pressure to be able to bring the light outside of you. What that means in very practical terms, it means that wherever you are in your life, and no matter what you've gone through, you have the ability to bring light out of yourself, but you need to do so far two things we've discussed. An environment of light, and number two, allow yourself to be pressured. Volunteer for some project. Be involved with others. Create goals that are beyond your capacity right now. And try to jump a little higher than you naturally jump. That will force you to exert yourself and bring out even better stuff outside of you. So if we're going to expect to be in our comfort zone and try to bring out the deeper light, it doesn't happen. That's not how it works. And we don't have to wait for negative pressure, for a loss, for a trauma, for any type of psychological breakdown to bring that deeper light out. You can do it by simply assuming pressures and commitments and deadlines in positive areas. So everybody's got their skills. Everybody's got their potential power, their potential light within inside them. So the question is what you're going to do about it. So let's step back a moment after I've given these two initial suggestions, and there'll be more in this Chanukah evening. And let's discuss what it is that we have within us and what we don't have within us, and why is it for some of us easier to access these forces, and for others it's not so easy. So the answer, my friends, obviously goes back to our formative years. Generally speaking, one of the greatest gifts and blessings a person can have in life is to be surrounded by people, by parents, by others that believe in us, that nurture us, that have believed and given confidence in us and in our strengths. Because as a child develops, child is exploring the world. And as it explores the world, it uses its skills. It uses its ability to see, to hear, it processes. For a child, everything is enchanting. And the child is trying to learn what this world is about. Now, as long as that child is in a situation where you have the ability to experiment and is given the confidence, go for it. And the child sees that it's protected and sees that if it falls, there will be someone there. The child builds up more and more courage to try new things. If, on the other hand, the child is in an environment of fear, an environment where everything is done tentatively, parents or educators or adults are constantly second-guessing themselves and second-guessing the child becomes tentative. So when something to explore, instead of just going for it, the child is very cautious and sometimes actually closes down. So imagine in our formative years where that light within us, which is all the potential, all the abilities, is trying to express itself and then being told no. Then of course it gets quite difficult to even believe in yourself, let alone to figure out what you're made of. But let's just, for the record, even someone growing up in the best of environments, it's still a challenge, it's still an effort to bring our skills out because they lie latent within ourselves. And that goes back to why is that the case? Because that's exactly how God wants. So in the Kabbalistic text, there's this question, why is the purpose of existence? So we know the ultimate purpose, it says, is because God desired to have a dwelling place in this lowest of worlds, in this material world. But there's another expression used, which is legalis shlemus kechesef. God wanted to reveal the full potential and the full completion, the full fulfillment of His abilities. Now obviously, why would God need that? But nevertheless, that's one of the reasons given. And it's explained that even though the ultimate purpose is a desire to have a dwelling place, yet there is value on certain levels of this type of actualization. Why? Because self-actualization is a critical component in our lives. In a sense, we are created with enormous potential, but it's locked within. This isn't just human being. Nature itself is loaded and filled to capacity with potential. Every technology that has ever been discovered, that has ever been developed, is essentially actualizing potential. Electricity was always around, but it took, whether accidents or experimentation, to discover it. Nuclear energy, every form of energy, it is within existence. No one created it anew. We learned how to tap into seemingly inanimate matter, and we learned to turn it into energy. On a very basic level, I mentioned the olive. An olive, grows an olive. If you never squeezed the olive, if you never pressed it, you would not know that it has oil in it. So there again, something is concealed and then it's revealed. So you can say in a way, all human progress, all human growth, everything that takes place on this earth is essentially a actualization of potential. So God is the one that planted the potential. That's without the investor. And we are the partner on the other end that develops and actualizes and brings to the surface, realizes that potential. On a personal level, you can say that's exactly the story of our lives. We begin our lives, this young, exuberant child emerges, explores the world, gets educated, learns its skills, all to achieve one important thing, to actualize the potential of your life. To actualize the potential of your soul. Thoreau, in his sad words, writes, most men lead lives of quiet desperation and go to their grave with a song in them. Well, that is unfortunately the reality for most people, but it's not the reality of Chanukah. It's not the reality of what you're able and capable of. Because we have within us a song, we have within us light, and that light is waiting to be released. And interesting thing, it's up to you to release it. So we have to recognize that we are packed. How should I put it? Filled to the core and filled to the top with enormous amount of energy. No one will ever know how much energy a person has. Tragically, when we really challenge in a negative way, you suddenly realize you have more energy than you thought you had. But as I said, it could also be brought in a positive way. So we have this enormous amount of potential that we may never even realize. They say we use 5% of the brain, 10% of the brain, whatever the percent is, it's not high. Then what about the rest of the potential that we have? Where is it? Well, in most cases, it emerges by accident. You go to summer camp, you go to school, there's a project, no one else to do it, you suddenly realize I can do it. We're filled with all kinds of potential. Right now, if someone were to ask you, how much potential do you still have in you that has not been actualized? No clue. But this is the purpose of life, is to realize that, and to realize that it's your mission, and it's your calling, is to figure out how to actualize that. And I mentioned so far 2 ways to do it. One is to be surrounded by light, which draws out your light. And number 2, be surrounded by pressure, positive pressure that in turn also elicits, the resistance elicits a certain forward thrust. Like any pump, like any form of energy, when you pressure it, it comes exploding forward. So that resistance, that pressure is what brings it out as well. So the story of life and the story of existence is this type of bottled up and enormous amount of potential that is unrealized. Now we add into the equation things like our dreams, our aspirations, all the things in life that we, as idealists and young people, were looking forward to. That's also part of all your pressure, or part of your light within you. What happened to all that light and idealism? Well, often again, life breaks us, and we begin to lower our expectations and lower our hopes, and we begin to not say we have less potential. We say, I don't really have hope that I'll ever actualize it. Well, that is a tragic mistake, my friends. We have the power, and we're able to do so. So let's go back to the story of our lives. So if we have a situation, we have an environment where we were not given that encouragement, and on the contrary, we were actually discouraged. So we grow into adults, and now we have all this enormous light within us, but what do you do with it? I don't even have the courage, some people will say, and strength to do anything about it. I feel I have a lot of potential. I feel sometimes frustration, but I don't feel I have the wherewithal, the strength, the conviction. So that is why we have to add additional elements into our lives that cultivate that. This is true for everyone, even those growing up in environments that were very bright and very illuminating, and there was healthy pressure. Because as I said, we live in a world, the material world, as the Kabbalists and the Hasidic masters explain, is like a shell. You may have heard the word klipa, klipat noga, which means actually a shell of light. It's a shell that surrounds light. So when you look at a fruit, or you look at a nut, you look at the fruity nut, not the human nut. Well, that's also the human nut, but you look at any fruit. Most fruits have some shell. Some have very, very translucent or very thin shells, like an olive, for example, like an apple, like a grape. Some have thicker shells, like an orange, and some have hard shells, like an egg, or even further, a nut. And there are walnuts, and there are very thick shells, a coconut. So you have many, many levels of shells. These shells are essentially protectors. They protect that which is inside. They protect the fruit within. But they also have a downside. If you're not aware there's a fruit within, the shell becomes an end in itself. So the word klipa is used, husk or shell, is used as an expression to describe the material world. That this world is material world in which we live. Everything around you, look around you, shells. They're all shells that contain energy within them. And the shells have the tendency of, their goal is to protect the energy, but they also can hide the energy. And when we crack the shell and we expose what's within, enormous energy comes out. And it's interesting, the thicker the shell, the more pressure needed to crack, and then you dig deeper. Like for example, when you have to dig very deep and find in deep embedded resources, precious stones, diamonds as I mentioned, there are many, many levels of shells. So let's bring this metaphor back to our own lives. You are a shell. All your potential is right now trapped inside of a shell. The shell of your body, the shell of your psyche, the shell of all the forces in life that have weakened you, that have perhaps demoralized you, that have discouraged you. And that shell is your enemy right now. It began as a protection. It began to protect you from the elements. But then the walls become so thick that the light inside cannot escape. And maybe the thickest shell of all, frankly, is the black hole. What's a black hole? A black hole is that the gravitational pull of the star is so intense, it doesn't even allow light to escape. So imagine a shell that is so deep that it convinces you there's no light, or doesn't let your light escape. That's the ultimate exile, the ultimate prison that a person can be in. And that is our greatest enemy. And that's exactly what happened on Chanukah. What does it say? The clouds descended, the dark clouds descended. The Greeks had defiled the temple. It was dark, spiritually dark. And there was a battle fought. But the battle is not the focus of Chanukah. The battle was won. And then it says, my Chanukah, the Talmud says. What is Chanukah? What miracle do we honor on Chanukah? So it says that they came into the temple and they could not find oil to light the menorah. Which, let's put it in psychological terms, you look at yourself in the mirror, you walk into your temple, and you don't find light. You wake up one morning, and you say, I don't feel good today. I feel down. I don't feel I want to get out of bed. I don't want to go to school. I don't want to go to work. Your temple has been defiled, and you don't feel that there is any light. And someone will say, why don't you find the light? You say, I don't see any light anywhere. And the story continues. They finally found, by looking, they found one cruse pach shemen, one cruse of oil. And they lit it. One cruse of oil that was protected, pure oil, I should add, that was sealed with the seal of the high priest. They lit it, and the miracle was that it didn't just burn one day, it burned for 8 days. What does that mean psychologically? Then we'll say, okay, I can't find any oil. Then you look a little, you find some oil. That's miracle number one. Miracle number two is, you may think, I only have a little light. This is not going to burn too long. It's like, I got inspired, okay, that was a miracle. Don't expect anything more from me. I still want to go right back under my covers. I want to go right back into my depressed mode. And your flame starts burning, and it burns not 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 8 days, an entire cycle, the week, plus 1. As the sages explain, the number 8 is the cycle plus 1. The cycle is the cycle of nature, 7 days of the week. And 8 is transcendence. Shemres hahekef, a powerful dimension that it's not just the cycle of 7, that you can go even beyond the routine. So, what does Chanukah teach us psychologically? Number 1, get out of bed. Wake up. You do have a flame in there somewhere. You just have to look. And number 2, even if you think the flame is weak, it'll burn more than you think it'll burn. Because you have more power than you think you have. And once you get over that hump, those 2 things, finding the cruse within you, finding that spirit within you, and then letting it burn a little more than you expected, confidence is built. And then you're not going to say the next time, I don't think I have it, because it's been proven otherwise. And when you're around people of light, the environment of light, and you see others who have once said the same thing, I don't think I have it within me, and they made it, and it went more than 7 days, 8 days, it starts saying, hey, you know something? If that person can do it, why can't I? And if that person who deluded or convinced himself he can't was wrong, maybe I'm also wrong. So Chanukah's next message is that maybe you're wrong when you think negatively of yourself. Maybe you're wrong that you have no light or very little light within you. So that's message number 3. Surround yourself with light, have pressure, and think maybe you're not right about the story of your own life. And people say, listen, you don't know my life. Other people have suffered. Nobody suffered like me. Yeah, you know something? We're here almost 2,500 years from the miracle of Chanukah. 2,400 years. And we're still standing. So no one can tell us, no one can tell you or me, no, it's not there. We've seen it survive the harshest circumstances. So the thing is to remember that that's not just possible, that's the story of Chanukah in our personal terms. So yes, there's a deep husk, there's deep darkness. There are many, many reasons that we can convince ourselves that it's not possible. But to make that statement in absolute terms is the most arrogant thing a person can do. Arrogance sometimes it takes the shape actually of self-deprecation, of self-demoralization. We say, I'm worthless. You're convinced absolutely, in arrogant terms, I am worthless. Who are you to know that for sure? So there's the element of recognizing with humility that even though things may be dark, you have to also remember that you may be part of the problem. Your perception of the darkness may be also trapping you, because you're convinced it's darker than it is, or you're contributing to that own darkness. That's called projection. So Chanukah says, listen, it's dark at night, we're lighting the menorah not in the morning, not the way it was lit in the temple, we're lighting it in the evening, when it's dark, and we're going to prove and demonstrate night after night that a light can be lit. And light and watch what happens. You light the light, and you know something? As dark as it is, in that area where the light burns, it automatically, without any effort, dispels darkness. If that's physically that way, how much more so spiritually, psychologically? Clarity, a little clarity, dispels much confusion. Think about that. So no matter how confused, no matter how disturbed, no matter how lost we may feel, what you need to do is begin with small. Find one small cruise. Light one day at a time, and suddenly things start happening. The worst thing is to say, give up. I can't do it all, so I can't do anything. No. So there's the husks, there's the klipot, there's the shells of all natures. Some are lighter, some are harder. Sometimes we have many shells in our life. Some are easier to pierce, others are harder to pierce. We've all got our defense mechanisms. We have our armor. But we also have that light that is remaining trapped within us. Now let me take this one step further. Since you have so much light inside of you, why do you think you have that? You can understand why you have so much frustration. Why doesn't somebody stop having frustration, Why is there frustration? Frustration and anxiety is the voice of the light and song in your soul that is desperately waiting to be released. So what happens when someone's in prison? If they're healthy, they don't give up. They keep banging on the door. They keep shaking the bars to get out. I want out. Someone that becomes resigned and becomes at peace with their darkness is very sad, because then there's no hope once you've given up. So you rattle the bars. You cry out. How does your soul remind you that it's trapped, that its light and talent and skills and potential is not being actualized? It causes you to feel down. It causes you to feel depressed, feel frustrated, to feel anxious. These are the voices of a hungry soul that is desperate to eat, a hungry soul that's desperate to drink, a thirsty soul that's desperate for something to quench its thirst. And as long as you don't, it will come to haunt you. Now, people who stop getting haunted, that's not a good sign. That means that it's gotten so deep that they're just like somebody in prison just falls out of exhaustion and says, I can't fight anymore. So one of the voices of our souls is exactly the thing that makes us most uncomfortable. It makes you uncomfortable. Thank God. If we didn't have nerves and we didn't feel pain, we could end up killing ourselves. This way, the nerve warns you. There's a problem. Do something about it. There's an infection, God forbid. You have a toothache. So obviously nobody wants the pain, and God forbid anyone should have pain. But what's worse is not to have the pain and the disease or infection is festering and eating away. You want to be warned. You want the alarm to go off. So at times, yes, we can take a painkiller to minimize the pain, but you want to get rid of the root of the pain. What's causing it? The same thing is emotionally and psychologically. When we feel somewhat down, when we feel angst, when we feel anxiety, always the voice of a soul that is saying, I'm not satisfied. Unfortunately, what we usually do is we numb it. We numb it with different types of self-medication, whether it's physical self-medication, whether it's emotional, whether it's psychological, whether it's this addiction or that addiction. Which that does not only does it not quench the thirst, it's quenching it with something that's toxic, that ultimately is making you even more thirsty and can be quite destructive and even harmful, even lethal. So the message of dark husks, the darkness within, is to realize I need to bring some real light. And that brings me back to the healthy pressures and to the light around us. How do you deal with that? Unfortunately, many of us, when we deal with anxiety, we try to find solutions, as I said, that are not really healthy solutions. They create more problems than they solve. The solution is, as Chanukah tells us, light a holy flame. Don't light an unholy flame. Light a flame of Torah, ner mitzvah Torah, or something of kindness, something that is divine, something that is wise, and light it night after night. So, recognizing hunger through the signs of frustration, of anxiety, is a very important thing, because it's telling you there's something inside that's waiting for you to act upon. Similarly to the concept in psychology today, where they talk about the inner child, that the inner child that's locked inside of a person who's been hurt is waiting to be released, and that child is going to make you miserable. That child will say, I am not happy, and will bother you until you begin to nurture it. You cannot ignore your inner child. You cannot ignore your inner flame. You cannot ignore your inner song. You cannot ignore your inner light. All that is about an inner forces that are building up, boiling, and they're waiting to erupt. And you don't want them to erupt like a volcano or earthquake when it's out of control. You want them to erupt in a healthy way. So you need to find passageways, you need to find cracks, you need to find channels and canals to channel that enormous energy within us. So, to sum up what we've said so far, is that all of us are filled, brimming, with tremendous amount of energy that we may never know how much is in there. How much has been actualized is usually a very small percentage. And you have the ability, you have the gift to do whatever you can to release it, and you don't have to wait till there's so much frustration, so much anger, so much anxiety, so many problems, and then suddenly explode out of simple desperation. You can act on it now, and that's why we have a Chanukah every year, a Chanukah that reminds us that these flames never get extinguished, a Chanukah that reminds us that despite all the challenges and everything that has happened in our lives, the flame still burns. And as you can see, the menorah behind me, that is still burning, that we lit a little earlier. These haneres halalu, these flames are flames of power. They're quiet, but they achieve something that the loudest weapons, most powerful ammunition cannot achieve. And with that being said, and before I continue on, I just want to share what I often do. Is Chanukah is a good time to sing a melody. So one of my favorite melodies is around Chanukah flames, Haneres Halolu, that I grew up with. So I'd like to sing the song with your permission. And hopefully sometimes what a song can accomplish, words cannot accomplish. And then I'll continue this discussion about discovering your inner flame, discovering your inner light, the enormous light that we have within us. So what better opportunity than to actually sing a song in that context. So it's called Haneres Halalu, and so usually sung right after the lighting of the menorah. Haneres Halalu, Haneres Halalu, Haneres Halalu, Halalu. Haneiros halalu anu madlikin al actualize. Diridam, diridam, diriday, diridayayom, diridam, diridam, diriyayayayay, haneiros halalu. Diriday, 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 nanano, diriday, 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 nanano, anu madlikin Allah, Shuais v'Allah, nisim v'Allah, nifalois, she'osis, Lavoseinu She'osiso Lavoseinu Bayomim Ahem Bizman Hazeh Bayomim Ahem Bizman An hazeh, bizman hazeh, al yedei kayanecho hagdayishim, al yedei kayanecho hagdayishim, al yedei kayanecho hagdayishim, al yedei kayanecho hagdayishim, al yedei kayanecho Hagdoishim al yedei kayanecho hagdoishim. Diri yarararoi, 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 yanum. Diri yarararoi, 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 yarararoi. Ay naray naroy narom, yararay 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 ayararay yararay 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 nom, yararay 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 araray yararay 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 narom. Chol shmeinas yimei Chanukah neiros halalu koydeshem. Chol shmeinas yimei Chanukah neiros halalu koydeshem. Chol shmeinas yimei Chanukah neiros halalu koydeshem. Koydeshem, 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 koydeshem. V'yein lanu reshus. Lishtamesh bahem, lishtamesh bahem, lishtamesh bahem. Bechol shmeinas yimei Chanukah neiros halalu koydeshem. Bechol shmeinas yimei Chanukah neiros halalu koydeshem. V'yein lanu reshus lishtamesh bahem Eloah. Liroizon bilvod, bilvod, kedei eloideis, ulalel, ulalel v'shimcho hagodel, loideis, ulalel, v'shimcho hagodel, al nisechovi, al nifleisechovi, al Yeshua Sechovo, Al Nisechovi, Al Nifleisechovi, Yeshua Sechovo, Al Nisechovi, Al Nifleisechovi, Al Yeshua Sechovo, Al Nisechovi, Al Nifleisechovi, Al Yeshua Sechovo. Al nisechovi, al nifleisecho, al yeshuaisecho. Thank you very much. Didn't get any real applause here because this is an online broadcast, but I'm sure you're all applauding in your own comforts of your homes or offices or wherever you may be. So happy Chanukah, everybody. Illuminating Chanukah, and let me share a few closing words regarding this light within us. The power of a mentor, of a good coach, of a good friend, is to continuously reinforce who we really are. Not to create anything new, not to give us any gifts, even though that time to time that also helps. But above all, the greatest gift is to make you feel confident in who you are and what you're able to be. So I mentioned 3 things. I mentioned being around an environment of light, people of light. The people of the light. Assuming upon ourselves pressure, healthy pressure. And I discussed the understanding of the darkness, the husks that surround and are constant at war with us. So it's a war. That itself is the greatest pressure of all, to break through and not be deceived by this darkness. But I want to suggest a few more things in the same context, which is all connected to Chanukah. As I said, all those things I mentioned, Chanukah provides. Chanukah, we light the flames. It's an environment of light. The pressure, the olive oil is a symbol of it. The pressure is when you do things for friends. We get together Chanukah. We give each other gifts. Chanukah gelt, other customs. We eat products made out of oil, even though that doesn't have to be eaten in abundance. It's symbolic. All of what? Of something that is derived through pressure. We light the flames at night to remind us that we live in a world of night, but light has the power to dispel that darkness. There's a few other things that I think are critical in helping a person nurture themselves, no matter what background we've had, to help ourselves access that inner light. As I said, we may never have a microscope powerful enough to recognize how much potential is really inside your brain, inside your heart, inside your soul, inside all your faculties. But there's no question that there's more than anyone will ever realize. So I mentioned pressure before. I want to go take that a step further. You want to really take this message of Chanukah home, even after the 8 days pass, when we're infused with this power that goes beyond 7, the cycle of 7 and 8, and we continue to burn. That even we find that little spark within. How do you maintain it? You maintain it by committing to something. Pressure yourself to commit to some project. And see where your skills are used, to make sure that your skills are used in that project. Because the best way to actualize potential is to test it. Some people are very good at certain things and may not have had the opportunity to really act on it. So you need to find yourself a group of people, some project, something that you feel comfortable with, something you're happy with, and hang around. I don't just mean hang around, volunteer to participate in some way. And what you'll learn is, number one, that you may be good at some things you're not even aware of. Number two, you'll be around people of excellence. And you may realize that some of those things that they do, you are also pretty good at. This is called incubation. This is called surrounding ourselves in environments that are light, but also that put pressure on us, not just as a bystander. So, how does one find that little cruise of oil within themselves? And how does it burn? Is by doing something. You can't just talk about it. You have to actually go ahead and go out there to find it. Now, the best way to find it is not by necessarily going into the street and look for a cruise of oil. It's by being involved in a project where your cruise of oil will be accessed. And maybe something you're not really even familiar with. Nothing wrong with trying something new. So that's a suggestion. Now, I can tell you right now, the resistance will be, number one, our routines. I'm too busy. My schedule is too busy as it is. Well, that comes down to priorities and determining whether it's important enough. And number two, I don't think I'm good at anything anymore. My things that I'm good at, I do, and the rest I stay away from. By making such a statement, you're essentially undermining the thing that makes you tick. You see, people with confidence and with courage, and especially when they're younger, are ready to take on any challenge. They don't think in those terms. So that statement that it's too late for me, or I'm too old, or I already have my routines, or that type, let someone else do it, that is defeating. It's a defeatist attitude, a fatalistic attitude, and that is something only you can battle. Nobody can force. If you go with that attitude, obviously, who would want you even on their team when you speak that way? So the key thing is that a person is motivated to get out of that situation. They get out of bed, as I said before. You know the story about Harvey. So he's sleeping in the morning, wakes up. This time he's going to stay late in bed. And his mother comes and says, Harvey, get out of bed. You got to go to school. Harvey says, no, I don't want to go to school. They don't like me there. The teachers don't like me. The students don't like me. But Harvey, you got to go to school. Well, a half hour passes and he just keeps on turning over one side to the other side, covering himself in the blanket. His mother keeps saying, Harvey, you have to go to school. Everybody's waiting for you. He says, Ma, nobody wants me there. They hate me. Why should I go? She says, because you're the principal of the school. This is what happens in our lives. We can be 30, 40, 50 years old. And obviously everyone expects the punchline to be that he's a little kid. No, he's the principal. But he's decided that nobody likes him. We project images upon ourselves that are not always correct. And often we create our self-defeating prophecies. That only intensifies the husks and intensifies the shells and the peels. Comes Chanukah and tells us, yes, it's dark. There are dark forces, but there is also tremendous light. And it's up to you to access it. When you begin to access it, it begins to become contagious. It begins to burn more and more and more. And it's up to us to be that people of light, people that illuminate, people that have that confidence. And by being around others that have that, that is usually one of the greatest ways to be a catalyst to our own light. So, that's one suggestion. Take upon yourself a new project, get involved with others in the project, and you'll realize certain skills will suddenly emerge. And if you don't think that's a priority, what can I tell you? Then you have to look at your life and say, what is the priority? Are the priority your routines, the habits, the things you've been doing for so many years? And I'm not necessarily speaking to someone who's desperate or someone who feels everything is, if everything is not going well, then obviously you want to try something new. But I'm talking about even if everything is going well, quote unquote, but is it for living up to the fullest potential of what you have? Are you actualizing all the strengths that you have? Now, all is a big word, so I don't mean exactly all in that sense. But how much of you is not being realized? How much do you have to give that is not getting out there? And this to me is one of the greatest blessings, to be able to participate in my own life and other people's lives, to help actualize. It's not create, it's actualizing. It's actualizing flowers, songs, melodies, light, flames that are embedded within our souls. And it's our birthright. And we have the power to release them. But we need to know that it's there. We need to know that we have the confidence and that we have the courage to go for it. And we need others to help us build that type of courage and confidence. And there are a few more things I would like to add in this context, Chanukah, besides the fact that we light the flame in the dark, and the cruise turns into 8 days. Every day we light more flame. As I mentioned, a flame automatically dispels darkness. A flame is also a flickering force. It's restless. So the restlessness of the flame, as I mentioned, is the restlessness of the soul. It's a healthy thing to be restless. Where it gets unhealthy is when it spills over to undue anxiety, where you have too much tension. But restlessness per se is a healthy thing, where you're not completely living in animal bliss and in complacency, where you have this restlessness and you watch the flickering flames constantly licking the air, trying to climb higher, trying to reach to a deeper and higher place, which is the nature of the soul and the nature of a human being's spirit, is to grow in that particular fashion. Now, I wanted to share one final thing, which was a story that I may have shared here before, but I've definitely written about it, called The Ninth Flame, that I heard several years ago about one of the concentration camps. It was Chanukah. And as far as Chanukah goes, as a matter of fact, the Jews found it very difficult to honor Chanukah, obviously, in those circumstances, but they really wanted to do so. And so one particular bunker, one particular situation, the few Jews went over to one of the younger boys who was like a teenager who worked. Well, he was a young teenager, and he used to help out in the what was it called? The mechanic on premises. He was in that part of the camp. So they asked him, maybe he can find some machine oil, and they'd be able to light some material, some cloth, so maybe they can light a little flame one night at Chanukah. In general, just as an aside, it's amazing that Jews, under those circumstances, with being such darkness, and with God literally concealing His face in such a profound way, still found that will and that interest to light a Chanukah flame. Anyway, it took a few days. He was finally able to smuggle out a little oil, a little machine oil. He put it into he wrapped it up in a cloth, and he brought it along with him. Came that night, and right outside the bunker, they didn't want to light it inside, so they lit it right near one of the bunkers where they slept. And unfortunately, one of the soldiers, one of the Nazis, caught them doing this. And once they did it, when they caught him, and they were about to take him away to shoot him, because this was obviously a great crime. So this older man said to the boy that had brought the cloth, he said to him, "Don't think that a flame was not lit here tonight. We'll call this the ninth flame. It's a flame that cannot be seen, but it's the flame that can never be extinguished. Because the effort you made, and the effort I made, the effort of all of us made, to light this flame is seen above. We did not merit to see it actually begin to burn, but remember the story, tell the story, and this flame will burn on forever through you remembering what happened here this night." This young man never saw this Jew again, but he never forgot the story. He told it many, many times. And I think to myself, those nights of Chanukah, that those Jews cried over the fact that they could not light Chanukah menorah, let alone be with their families and peace as we can be today. But they paid a price. And they paid a price. They did light a flame, because in their merit, we today can sit in the comfort of our homes, comfort of our lives, and light flames. The chain was not broken. The story tells us the power of a flame that continues to burn inside. Sometimes we merit to see it, and sometimes we don't see it immediately, but it bears fruit. It's a seed. So I say this to myself, to all of us. We live in a world today where, yes, there's darkness, but how could we compare it to that darkness? It's obscene to compare it to that darkness. We live in a world with blessings, with the freedoms, but we have a darkness that nobody has ever had, and that's the darkness of apathy, of complacency. And that darkness is a very hard one to fight, because it's comfortable. It doesn't have fangs. It doesn't have teeth. It doesn't have weapons. It's very quiet. It's like a cancer that eats away quietly from within. Passion. Where do our passions go today? Our passions go toward making money. Our passions go toward sexuality, towards other forces that satisfy us for the moment. But passion in the soul, passion in the spirit, passion in eternal values that live on forever is something that you don't find today. Most young people, you ask them, what are they ready to fight for? What are they ready to die for? It'll probably be a football team, or some other video game, or something that is extremely superficial. And in a way, it's a blessing. It's a blessing because we don't have to fight a war against direct enemies, against Nazis or Cossacks or Inquisitions or Crusaders or whatever it may be. But there's an erosion of a flame within. And strangely, when people were pressured in the past, in history, that flame burned very brightly. Maybe not brightly in terms of like lights on Times Square. It wasn't fireworks, but bright in quality. We wouldn't be here had that flame not persisted and prevailed through all those middle dark ages and early dark ages. So we have to say to ourselves, how do we arouse that passion today when we don't have such an enemy? And the challenge is to realize that apathy, complacency, that's the enemy. Why don't you look that in the face and say, you are my enemy, and I will not allow apathy and complacency and indifference to eat away at my spirit and soul. And pass on that passion to your children, to your grandchildren. And Chanukah flame is, besides being a nice evening, and we'll eat some latkes and have some cake, and or have some donuts, and pass around gifts. All that's beautiful. But turn Chanukah into the flaming passion, and to the passionate flames that it deserves. Flames that went through the darkest of times. Let us do service, honor a man like that who gave his life to try to light a flame, Chanukah couldn't light the actual flame. The only thing that remains is the ninth flame. Let us honor that with equal passion, more powerful passion, that a person like that deserves in how we commit to our values. And that, to me, my friends, is the greatest way to actualize your potential. Then that pressure came from outside, terrible pressure. Today the pressure has to come from us. You have to wake up in the morning and say, today is going to be different. I am not going to give in to the complacency of my routines and the status quo. I want to change the world in some way. You make such a statement, and one that comes from your heart, and you really mean it, guaranteed that your potential will begin to actualize like that. But it has to be important and a priority. Make it a family project. Make it a communal project. Lead the way. You can't lead? Find a leader. Provoke. Provoke yourself, provoke others. There's no other way to pierce. Because if not, we become part of the problem. If we're not part of the solution, we're part of the problem. There's no third option. It's not like the guy that says, I used to think I'm indecisive, now I'm not so sure. That is also a statement. That's also part of the problem. So Chanukah is a celebration of light. Light is a proactive force. It's a passionate force. It's an illuminating force. It's a force that pierces darkness. Doesn't wait around for something to happen. It makes things happen. It illuminates. It warms. It takes an initiative. The flame within us, the fire within us, this fire within the belly, should come alive, that we are walking lights. We are flames. We are lights. And recognizing that you have that great potential, you don't have to wait to meditate on it. Act like you have great potential, and the great potential begins to emerge. Act with a compelling sense of urgency, and then you'll have to elicit and bring forth new artillery. And you'll bring forth others. If you can't do something yourself, you bring someone else on board. So instead of investing all our passions into things that are impermanent, to invest part of them into these permanent values that continues to make the flame burn, generation after generation, passing that on to our families, to our communities. And the more of us that initiate that type of intensity, the more power there'll be. Now we can wait around till someone ignites us, but how much better and more powerful it is if we ourselves are flames that initiate, are flames that burn, are flames that light others. And everyone has that cruse of oil within them. No one does not have it. That's a promise. That's a given. And the cruse of oil may be difficult to find. And when you burn it, light it, you may think it doesn't have much to burn only one day. Not true. It'll burn for an entire cycle and more. And then you realize as it begins to burn, it will begin to burn even more. Clarity breeds clarity. Courage breeds courage. Light breeds light. You'll also attract people with light. Darkness does not attract light. A little flame attracts other flames. And then they begin to be drawn to each other. And together we all create this one big torch, one big light that hopefully has the power to dispel, not just hopefully, it naturally has the power to dispel large amounts of darkness. And flames join, when they join, they become like one. You can't even tell where the beginning of one and the end of the other is. Also, a flame does not get diminished as it illuminates others. So as much as you give someone else, your flame not only does it not get weaker, it gets stronger because now it has the other flames that support it. So there's so many lessons about flames that teach us about our own potential, about the greatness and the good within us, about how much we're able to accomplish. But it takes that first step to join something. Mobilize yourself. Draft yourself in an army. Draft yourself in some project, in some type of volunteer activity. Let your talents be used for something that is illuminating and warming. And you'll see how they start emerging. And when there's more pressure, more demands, the more you'll be able to deliver. Like the squeezing of the olive, the more you press it, the greater the oil, the more the oil that originates, that's derived from it. So, I want to wish everyone a very happy Chanukah, a Chanukah that continues to illuminate night after night, until we finally reach the 8th night, after every night adding more flames. But after the 8th night, the flame doesn't burn out. It just takes on a new shape. Chanukah gives us that surge, and now after that begins another stage where we begin to bring that light into the rest of our lives, and spills over into whatever we've initiated, whatever we've committed to. We resolve to do Chanukah, spills over to the days after Chanukah, and carries us into the year, and the years to come, all within light, with illumination, within power, and with all the blessings that for every time we take upon ourselves a resolution, we're always given strength to be able to fulfill it. And it becomes a two-way partnership with God Himself, where you make your decision and God blesses you to be able to fulfill it, and vice versa. God gives us strength and we actualize it. So may we all actualize these powerful souls, these powerful flames within us, these haneres halalu anu, these lights that we illuminate, that we ignite and we kindle every night of Chanukah. And everyone should have a very blessed and illuminated year, and a lightning year. And please see us here at the Meaningful Life Center as a resource, we burn the midnight oil, no pun intended. We are hopefully our flames that help ignite other flames, and we are mutual partners in this. So I invite you in every possible way to participate and partake in our activities, all our online programs and the ones to come. Any ideas you may have, you're more than happy to. We are happy to hear any thoughts and input. Anything you'd like to join us in doing. This is a perfect type of project. We have plenty of different activities, plenty of opportunities, and maybe ideas that we haven't even thought of that you may think of. So stay in touch with us at meaningfullife.com, as well as through email. If you have an email address, please send it to us. Who doesn't have an email address today? We'll be happy to stay in touch and keep you informed of what we're doing, as well as the weekly thoughts that we send out. And everyone have a very happy Chanukah, a blessed Chanukah, an eternal illuminating year. And we'll be together next Wednesday, and hopefully every Wednesday after that. Thank you very much.